to thank you for facilitating this event, and thank all the good people at HRS, and I thank all distinguished fellow speakers for being here this Friday evening. Well, the thing, impunity is has always been a problem in Turkey. Impunity offered to state officials for acts they perpetrate, illegal acts they perpetrate in the performance of their duties. Historically, in the 1980 coup d'etat, the military junta, following the coup d'etat, with a constitutional amendment, offered complete impunity to whoever was involved in the coup. And unfortunately, people responsible of hideous acts following the coup d'etat in 1980, they weren't brought into justice until 30 years from the coup itself, in when the AKP government proposed an amendment to the constitution, but that didn't go ahead because of political turmoil in Turkey, and nobody eventually was brought to justice. And well, the thing is, after July 15 of 2016, unfortunately, impunity has stopped being an exception in Turkey and has become the norm. As Burak, you briefly suggested, Turkey's impunity policy has three limbs. One of them is the moral legitimization of the unlawful acts of the state officials. And this was done by Erdogan at the very top. And he said, even if these people were released sometime, our nation was going to punish them wherever they see them on the streets. And another a minister, a cabinet minister, said, you know, they will beg us to kill them. And some religious figures very close to the AKP, they thought about, in public rallies in support of Erdogan, they thought of the property of the Gülenists being a bounty for the nation. And of course, we shouldn't forget the national TV station TRT, and TRT proudly paraded high-rank military personnel in front of TV cameras who were obviously tortured. The other limb is the actual and practical protection provided to the perpetrators. This is not legal protection. This is by simply ignoring any applications made in relation to any acts of torture or ill treatment. Perhaps I can quote the UN's Special Rapporteur on Torture. He said, you know, this is what he found in between 1st of January 2016 and the 1st of December 2016, only in Ankara, 24 law enforcement officers were brought to the attention of the public prosecutor, and for alleged acts of torture and ill treatment, and none of them were indicted eventually. I think another good example is the late teacher who's very famous now in Turkey, is Gökhan Açıkoğlu. Despite evidence, all sorts of evidence and witness statements, 3 years down the line, the public prosecutor decided not to pursue the case. The other limb is perhaps the most important, is the legal protection offered to the perpetrators, and these were made in the form of 2 separate acts of parliament and 3 separate executive decrees following the failed coup. And Previously, the Turkish parliament offered complete protection, impunity to the head of the Turkish intelligence service, and he still cannot be prosecuted unless Erdogan himself authorizes it. And the personnel of the Turkish intelligence service, they may not be prosecuted for any acts of any criminal acts without prior consent of the head of the National Intelligence Service. And in February 2014, the top brass were offered impunity by the Turkish government. So the generals at the top of the Navy, Air Force, and the Army in general, they may not be prosecuted without the consent of Erdogan. And of course, this is when I talk about the impunity offered to the members, personnel of the National Security Service, it becomes more significant given the fact that credible reports emerged connecting the MIT to enforce disappearances and acts of torture within their headquarters in Ankara. And bar associations, despite very credible reports from bar associations. The other impunity offered by an act of parliament was the Turkish government has amended a particular law called the Provincial Administration Law, and so the security personnel now cannot be prosecuted without the consent of political figures in that area. Of course, this paved way, unfortunately, to the total destruction of a few Turkish cities and towns in the southeast Turkey. Following the failed coup in 2016, the Turkish government they quickly passed 3 executive decrees, and which offered, unfortunately, and the first time in the Turkish history, not only to the public officials but to the general public as well. And what followed was the cadets and low-ranking soldiers who were sent to the famous bridge in Istanbul on the night of the coup. Some of them were beaten and stabbed to death. And when their families pursued the matter and filed a suit against the perpetrators, the public prosecutor's office dismissed all these files with making specific references to these pieces of legislation, to these, what we call them KHK, executive degrees, emergency law degrees. And likewise, in a northern city, another public prosecutor dismissed another case just because of the protection that these emergency law decrees offered to the perpetrators. But what is worrying is now these emergency decrees, they're not emergency decrees anymore. They're incorporated into the law, and so that now they are still in place, and and more soundly so. For one reason or another, according to the Turkish Ministry of Justice's reports, between years 2013 and 18, some 5,300 people have been investigated for acts of torture, and only 1,000 of them were ever indicted, and only a mere fraction of them, 70 people, were actually convicted of torture and ill treatment, which made the UN rapporteur on torture conclude, I will quote if you don't mind, the low number of investigations and prosecutions initiated in response to allegations of torture and ill treatment seemed grossly disproportionate to the alleged frequency of such violations. So I find it very, very disproportionate. Well, since 2016, numerous credible reports have been published which established the practice of impunity in Turkey. I would like to name a few without taking too much of your time. Reports by the UN, the Council of Europe, European Commission, CPT, even United States State Department, and Human Rights Watch. Well, perhaps I can conclude by just saying what needs to be done. I think responsible institutions should conduct more frequent visits to Turkey, and perhaps the international community could be more pressing in encouraging them to do so. As things stand, the Turkish people have been, let down by the European Court of Human Rights, and there are quite a few places they can turn to, and unless and until the world has a unified and concerted stand against torture and ill treatment, and show that these people, the perpetrators, have nowhere to go and nowhere to hide, this will still be, unfortunately, a problem in the future. Thank you.